Good afternoon. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Gainesville meeting at the Cade Museum. I'd ask that you please silence your cell phone, and if you're watching on YouTube, please register your participation by sending an email to info@rotarygainesville.org. And now for our song and pledge, please welcome Jeff Sims to the podium.
We will try something a little bit different today. Maestro. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Fantastic. Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jeff. And now for our invocation, Lori Vidal.
Let's pray together. As we gather together again, getting close to the end of the summer and the beginning of fall, we anxiously anticipate the changes of seasons in your creation. We pause to express our thankfulness for your protection from Hurricane Idalia in our community, and we pray for our neighbors and friends throughout our area, our state, who are recovering. As we begin to move into high gear in our community with schools starting at every level of education, so many activities, it's a good thing to keep ourselves grounded on the how we got here as a city called Gainesville. Keep us ever mindful of where we've come from and where it is beneficial to go in the future as the university city in North Central Florida. Thank you for those who have created a place in Gainesville to capture our history as a community. And we pause today to visit our history. Bless our time together as we continue to focus our efforts in our community upon service above self. I pray in your sustaining name. Amen.
Thank you, Lori. You may be seated. I ask that guests and visiting Rotarians remain standing to be introduced as a microphone is brought around. Does somebody have the microphone?
Let's move around.
Thank you, Tom.
I'm Robert Mounts. I'm here today with my new neighbor temporarily while he's building a house in Oakmont, Mario Cartaya, who is a well-known Fort Lauderdale architect and emigre not only from Cuba originally, but now to Gainesville, like many people, fleeing South Florida. And he will be, this is a Matheson day because he's one of our presenters coming up September 20th, talking about finding his roots in Cuba, along with another colleague, David Powell. So he's got a book. He's a new neighbor. He should be a member of our club one of these days.
Welcome. We're glad to have you with us. And now we'll bring Jeff back to the podium for the September birthdays. I'm going to announce your birthday. And in the giving spirit, if it is your birthday, please bring $1 to the podium while we sing. And as a reminder, the $1 is going towards our Reading Safari program. September birthdays are Tony Barr, Colin Burrows, whose birthday is today, Mary Day Coker, Tom Collette, Simon Harris, Grace Horvath, Ivan Ulrich, Jerry Painter, whose birthday is today, Melanie Shore, and Terry Wilson, whose birthday is today. Jeff?
Happy birthday to all those Rotarians. Please join me in wishing them happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you, and many more.
Thank you, Jeff. And now with an announcement, Greg Young.
Thank you, Bill and Jason. So I have two announcements. I'll try to make these fast. First, I want to announce the Rotary Club of Gainesville Service Above Self Award. We are going to be accepting nominations or nominees through the end of September. Friday, September 29th is the deadline to turn those in. Look for an email from me that will have information on the nominating form and the information about the Service Above Self Award. It was given in the name of E.T. and Vam York. Years ago, they bestowed this in perpetuity, and we do this annually to honor an individual in Alachua County who's rendered outstanding service and dedication to the community and helping the quality of life in our community and beyond. So please keep an eye out for that and be thinking about someone that would be a deserving recipient of the Service Above Self Award. Also, I want to announce at the Vibrant Club Seminar in Orange Park recently, President Linda, myself, and Wes, we headed over there, and the Rotary Club, because of the hard work of all the Rotarians in our club, we received the Rotary Citation Award for 22-23, and we also, as you may recall, there was the gauntlet was thrown down about whether we could beat Jacksonville for membership, and I would say that we did. So we're going to have... So we were presented this up at the district, and we would like to host a bourbon tasting, which I know nothing about. So we'll get some people that know more than me, set up an event, and we'll have a sampling of various bottles of different kinds of bourbon. So there you go. Keep your eye out for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. And now please help me welcome Eric Goday to the podium to introduce our next craft talk.
Thank you, Colleen. Okay, our next craft talk is going to be by Mabel Baker. Mabel is the interim director of the Blount campus at Santa Fe College, and as the director, Mabel is responsible for all operational aspects of the campus. A large part of her responsibility is to ensure access to educational opportunities for the East Gainesville community through the development of collaborative academic programming, target enrollment growth strategies, and a community outreach. In her previous role at Santa Fe, Mabel coordinated the Carl D. Perkins Grant, a federal grant that supports the advancement of career and technical education and workforce development initiatives. Mabel has been with Santa Fe for 15 years. Let's give a great Rotary welcome for her craft talk.
I'm so nervous, I don't know what to do. When you have to do something like this is when you realize that you might only say that. Sorry, is that better? I've worked for the college for 15 years, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful ride for me at Santa Fe. It's been a great place to work with many, many wonderful people that I've come in contact with over the years. Yes, I am responsible for the operations of the Blunt Center, from scheduling events to making sure that the community feels welcome in our center and that we're a part of the community. That is one of my initiatives as the interim director at the center, among other things that go along with the day-to-day operations of an academic and educational center. I have lived in Gainesville since I've been a small child. My family moved here from Miami. They actually moved to Micanopy, so much of my life was spent in the rural environment of Micanopy. I attended public schools here, Gainesville High School. I graduated from the University of Florida. And in between that, I've had the opportunity to live in many different places. I've lived in Savannah, I've lived in Orlando. What I've always found is that no matter where I've lived, Gainesville has always been home to me. I've always found my way back to Gainesville. And on, I think, my third return visit, that's when I started working at Santa Fe, and I have worked a lot of my career in promoting career and technical education at the college, workforce education programs. So I spent a lot of time being able to do that, and that has been a real joy for me. I am the youngest of 4 children, and when I mean young, I have a sibling who's about 30 years older than me. So, so it is. I am really the baby of my family, and I had a great upbringing here in this community. Thinking of my hobbies, that goes back to when I said I think I'm boring because I don't kayak, I don't canoe, I don't jump out of planes, I haven't taken any desert trips. What I'm working on right now for my hobbies is that I am finishing the last chapter of my dissertation. So that has taken up a lot of my time. And what I, thank you. And so outside of that, I've learned to love gardening, and before my dissertation and the new job that I have, I enjoy traveling and working on new recipes. That was something that was very dear to me. One of the things that I'd like to leave you guys with about me is that the thing that I love so much about the Rotary Club is your commitment to community and to serving the community. And that is something that my parents instilled in me. They modeled that. They didn't necessarily say, this is what you do, but they modeled that to me. And so it was just a belief that we are richer when we're in service to other people. That's where you get your reward. It is not that you're taking from people, that we're giving. And so I love the opportunity that I have here with you guys to be a part of the community, to help serve. And I'm looking forward to being a more active member throughout the years. And I truly appreciate you guys, and I thank you for allowing me to join the Rotary.
Thank you so much, Mabel. And in recognition of you completing your craft talk, we have the 4-way test plaque for you, so you can display this in your office. And just remind you that you're a proud member of our club. Okay, happy Tuesday, everybody. Before we move on to our speaker, just a couple of quick announcements for you guys. First of all, you may have seen an email earlier today from Elena Frazier. Again, still looking for folks to join on the auction committee. There is going to be a brief meeting after this meeting for anybody that's interested in assisting with that project. That's going to get here sooner than it gets here very quickly. So all the help that we can get to make it a great event, everybody, we definitely appreciate that. Also, just a reminder, September 17th, volleyball versus Wisconsin. We beat Minnesota over the weekend, so we're undefeated in volleyball. It's really it's a great place to be. The link to buy tickets is on our webpage and on the homepage of DACDB now, and I'll send out another reminder at some point. So I hope you guys can join us for that. The other, mark your calendar, I want to announce, you'll be receiving more information shortly, is that we are partnering with the other clubs in Gainesville to do a In Polio Now event on October 21st. It's going to be a Pedals and Pints for Polio. So there's going to be an elite bike race in the morning. There's going to be a fun ride in the early afternoon, followed by a fellowship at, I believe it's First Magnitude. So we'll be sending more information out about that, but this is going to be October 21st. So with that, I'd like to bring up Bob Mounts to introduce today's speaker.
Thank you. You know, a lot of history is very memorable and something we want to preserve, and that's the mission of the Matheson History Museum. Last Thursday night's football game, not so much. That's history, right? But the one thing about our club I appreciate is that we have several members who have supported the Matheson History Museum, either serving on the board or as donors, like David Chadwick, Jay Norquist, Joe Kaitlyn, Gene Chalmers, one of our generous benefactors, Greg Young, former president of the Matheson History Museum, that I was privileged to follow, and I'm now in my second year as the board president. And today we have back, again this year, our outstanding executive director, Kaitlyn Hof-Mahoney, who's been with the museum since she was a graduate student after getting her BA in history from Auburn. She took her orange and blue colors to Gainesville, got a master's in museum studies, and is a true Gator, have been with us since 2015. She moved up in the ranks, served as curator of collections, and for the last 2 years or so, she's been our executive director, and we're on the ascendancy under her leadership. Today, she's going to talk about real history, the history of the Matheson family, and we're highlighting that this Saturday afternoon, 2 to 4 at the Matheson House, where we'll have Jason Hedges and his wife playing a little bit of Jimmy Buffett style music. And I hope you all come out. It's free. One of the other things I really appreciate about the Matheson Museum, almost every one of our presentations is free to the public. All you have to do is register, and there's the one coming up with Mario Cartayo on the 20th. Please come. We filled the house last year at many events, and we'll do that again. I look forward to your talk. Kaitlyn Hof-Mahoney.
All right, let's see. Is this good height? Great. Thank you, Bob, and thank you for inviting me back to speak to the Rotary Club again this year. I really enjoyed speaking with you all last year, and I also am grateful for an excuse for me to dig into our archives and do some research, which is the fun part of my job, which, you know, doesn't get to happen as much as I would like. So thank you for an excuse to do it. All right. The Matheson History Museum. Before I start, I just want a quick gauge of the audience. How many of you have visited the museum before? Awesome. Love to see that. So thank you for being part of us in the past, and I hope you'll come back and join us. So just a quick overview of the museum. I know that this text is pretty illegible, so I apologize for that, but I will just briefly give you an overview of the museum. We have 4 historic buildings. In the American Legion Hall is our main building where we do our exhibits and programs. The historic Matheson House, which is the 3rd oldest home in Gainesville. The Matheson Library and Archives in the Gainesville Gospel Tabernacle building, and the Tyson Tool Barn. As Bob mentioned, we are totally free for admission. We're currently open Wednesday through Saturday from 11 to 4 and offer tours of the house and research at our library and archives by appointment. We have an extensive collection related to local history. Some of the highlights are our Florida postcard collection. We have about 20,000 postcards related to Gainesville, Alachua County, and Florida. We have an extensive stereo view card collection, and we also have a lot of records from local organizations and families, including this club, which we recently worked with you all to take in some of your archives as well. So I encourage you to come and visit us.
We are an independent nonprofit. We're not part of the city, we're not part of the county, we're not part of UF. So we do rely on our members' donations and grants to fund our operations. So with that said, there is information on your tables about ways that you can get involved if you're interested. And if I could just get a quick show of hands for all of my current and former board members. These people would love to tell you about getting involved with the museum. So they are here in your club every week, and you can chat with them whenever you'd like. Our two current exhibits right now, we have We Are Here, Stories of Multilingual Speakers in North Central Florida, and then Return to Forever, Gainesville's Great Southern Music Hall. Both of those exhibits will be up through at least the end of this year, so I encourage you to come out and give them a view. They're very interesting and widely diverse topics. So now getting into the meat of what I'm talking about today, this is a question that I get asked a lot. What is Matheson? Why is Gainesville's local history museum called the Matheson? And the answer is because of the Matheson family. So again, I apologize. I know that this text is very small, but we're going to talk more about it. But this is just to kind of give you an overview of the Matheson family, which was one of the early and prominent Gainesville families here. They came from Camden, South Carolina, like many of the other early Gainesville families. And Sarah Hamilton Matheson preserved the legacy of her husband's family and founded the Matheson History Museum, which we opened to the public 30 years ago in March. So we'll be celebrating our 30th anniversary in 2024. And that is the reason why we are called the Matheson. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the people who lived in the historic Matheson house, and then really take some time to focus on my personal favorite Matheson, and that is our founder, Sarah Hamilton Matheson. So I want to start with Alexander and Harriet Perry Mary Matheson. That is quite a mouthful, but according to census records, it seems that she typically went by her middle name of Mary. So Alexander is the gentleman without facial hair in this photograph. He's standing next to his brother, James Douglas. And he was the oldest child of Christopher Matheson and Catherine Hale Matheson. And yes, that is the Hale family of the Hale homestead. They were another one of the early families who also came down from Camden, South Carolina. And he was born around 1826. And he was the original owner and builder of the Matheson house here in Gainesville. He purchased 10 acres of land from James Bailey in 1857 for $225. And those three names that we've just discussed, Matheson, Hale, and Bailey, those are the three oldest homes remaining in Gainesville. The Bailey house is the oldest, then the Hale homestead, and then the Matheson house. He appeared on the 1860 census as a head of household here in Alachua County, along with his wife and children. And then he also appeared on the 1870 census as a resident in his brother's household. So he had left Gainesville during the Civil War, and it appears that he came back and forth a few times afterwards, but he never lived in Gainesville permanently after the war. He was also listed as a registered voter in the 1868 to 1870 voter list. And he was a founding member of the Masonic Lodge here in Gainesville. And then his wife, Harriet Mary, she was the daughter of Jack Perry and Wilmot Stark Perry of Liberty Hill, South Carolina. And if that name sounds familiar to you, that's because, yes, she is the niece of Florida Governor Matheson Stark Perry. So this was a very well-connected and influential family. Moving on to our next couple, we have James Douglas and Augusta Florida Steele Matheson. And this is, in this picture with Alexander, James's most defining feature throughout most of his life is his really fantastic mustache. So that is James Douglas. And here he is again. So his wife, Augusta, she was a native Floridian. She was the only child of Augustus and Elizabeth Steele. She was born in 1847 on the island of Atsina Odie, which is over by Cedar Key. Her father, Augustus, owned an extensive amount of land in that area. And she grew up on the island. She was their only child, so she was very, very close with her parents. She had a very rich social life on the island, and she also often would travel with her father. In 1860, they took a trip to New York City and watched the 4th of July fireworks while they were there. During the Civil War, she left her family home with her mother and most of their belongings and stayed with various family friends. The coast was not a safe place to be during the war, and so she and her mother moved inland and did not return to Itzina Odi until after the war. Her father had passed away in 1864, and when the war ended in 1865, she and her mother returned home, and she met a young merchant from Gainesville named James Douglas Matheson, and they were married in Cedar Key in 1867. And we have an extensive collection of things that Augusta saved, one of which is a letter that she wrote to one of her friends shortly after her marriage, where she said, "I make desperate efforts to keep house and have been really successful in bread making. Mr. M is not hard to please." So it seemed to be a very loving and good relationship for them. So Mr. M, her husband, James Douglas, whose friends and family called him Jimmy, he moved to Gainesville, like many of the other Mathesons, from Camden, South Carolina. He arrived here about 1865 after the Civil War. And his primary activity here in Gainesville was that he ran a dry goods store, which was on University Avenue on the Courthouse Square. The building is still there in the block where the Papa Top is, right on University Avenue. And he also worked in publishing and real estate. And a fun fact about James Douglas is that there's actually a map that he published of Alachua County in the 1870s that is in the Library of Congress. So that is pretty exciting for us. So these two lived out the rest of their lives in Gainesville in the historic Matheson house. And they did have 4 children together, but unfortunately only one of their children survived to adulthood. And Augusta was a very sentimental woman. She saved newspaper clippings, letters from her friends, letters to her friends, and the things that she preserved of both her family and the Matheson family form the core of the Matheson and Steele family papers at the museum. And she was very proud of her son, Christopher. When she passed away in 1916, Christopher was a highly respected local attorney and also the mayor of Gainesville at that time. And her husband also was very involved in local office. James Douglas was elected the county treasurer in 1908, and then he was also elected as the president at that time of the Board of County Commissioners and served in that position until he passed away in 1911. And according to a newspaper article that his wife tucked away in her Bible, the Board of County Commissioners adjourned for the funeral, and all of his fellow businessmen on the courthouse square closed their doors for an hour as a last mark of respect to one who lived to see Gainesville grow from a mere village to its present proportions. And the third couple that lived in the Matheson house are Christopher and Sarah. So this is Augusta and James's son. He was born here in Gainesville in 1874. He attended the East Florida Seminary in Gainesville and graduated from the Citadel in Charleston. He worked as an attorney and was also the mayor of Gainesville from 1911 to 1918. And he had really had kind of a part A and a part B to his life. So after his legal and political career, he became a Presbyterian minister and moved to Oklahoma, which is where he met his wife, Sarah. So Sarah Hamilton was born in North Carolina in 1901. She graduated as the valedictorian of her high school class. She graduated from the North Carolina College for Women, which is now the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She also did graduate study at the Presbyterian School of Christian Education in Richmond, Virginia, and graduated in 1928, at which point she moved to Oklahoma to be a teacher at the Oklahoma Presbyterian College, and that is where she met her husband, Christopher. So they were married in 1933 and lived together in Oklahoma for 12 years. And then she wrote that we moved to Florida in 1946, where I continue to live in the dear old Matheson house. So I want to take some time to talk specifically about one of the facets of Sarah's life. Her husband passed away in 1952, and Sarah lived until 1996. So she had quite a period of time on her hands where she was able to become very involved in our community here in Gainesville, as well as the world. So what I want to focus on today are her world travels. So in July of 1930, Sarah took her first international trip with her mother and 2 of her sisters. They traveled from New York to London aboard the steamship Coronia. And these images are all things that we have in our collection at the museum that Sarah saved. So we have a postcard with an image of the ship. We have a little timetable with the details about the voyage. And then the page there in the center is a page from a program that had an event schedule for the voyage, menus, as well as a passenger list. So up towards the top with the bracket is the 4 Hamilton women. And then there's also handwritten notes that must be about the various people that they met while they were traveling on this ship. So these are a few pages from one of Sarah's many, many passports. This one was issued in 1966 and has stamps and visas from London, Greece, Madrid, Bangkok, Cairo, Japan, Hong Kong, New Delhi, Nepal, China, and Iran. She went all over the world, and this is just one of about 5 or 6 passports that we have for her at the museum. And it really is enviable. I certainly wish my passport looked like that. And then these are some of the things that she brought back with her. You can see we have, this is actually a towel from New Zealand, a napkin from Australia, a little sticker from a hotel in Chile, a kind of tourist guidebook put out by the Tourism Bureau in Egypt, and then a booklet from Brazil. These are just a few of the things that, again, we have in the collection. There are also souvenirs from travels to Germany, China, Greece, Canada, Italy, Panama, Peru. She really did go everywhere. And then these are just a few of the 3D objects that she brought back with her that we have on display in the Matheson house. But one of the most personally significant trips that she took was a 1960 missionary posting to Korea. She had accepted an offer from the Presbyterian Board of World Missions to serve as a teacher for the children of the other missionaries. She wrote this article for the Florida Churchwoman shortly before she left, and she says, "Upon my request, I was granted a 1-year appointment with the privilege of staying 3 years. My assignment is to teach missionaries' children in Suncheon, Korea. I will have about 8 children this year, ranging from grade 1 to grade 6. We will have a little 2-room schoolhouse. I'm not sure whether it is red or not, and the teacher will board with the pupils." And then this is a picture from the Gainesville Sun of Sarah's luggage. She packed many of her belongings in this lard barrel, which is what the Board of Missionaries advised her to use. And she said, "They urged us to use these cans, so I got a suitcase to match the blue of it and now have matching luggage." So Sarah stayed in Korea for 2 years. She returned home in 1962, and she spent 3 months traveling on her way home, visiting 28 countries in Southeast Asia, India, Iraq, Egypt, the Holy Land, and Europe. And this was a report from some of her coworkers that they wrote in June of 1962. "Mrs. Matheson served us very ably as a teacher of missionary children in Suncheon for 2 years. She also conducted English Bible and conversion classes for the teachers of Matheson School and entered into various church activities of the local Korean community in such a way that endeared her to the hearts of all of them. We regretfully saw this ambassador of goodwill from the home church return to the U.S." And even after she returned to Gainesville, Sarah continued to stay involved with the international community. She was the president of the Gainesville Council for International Friendship. She often hosted international students, particularly students from Korea, in her home, and also helped to sponsor the Sister City Project for Gainesville. This rather unfortunate candid photograph of Sarah eating some fruit was from an article published in the Gainesville Sun from a trip of several delegates from Gainesville who traveled to Manizales, Colombia, as one of the first sister cities for Gainesville. And then in addition to all of her traveling, service work through her church, she was the first female elder for the Presbyterian Church here in Gainesville, and involvement in other local organizations. Sarah also was able to kind of bring to fruition the work of both herself and her mother-in-law to preserve Matheson family history and Gainesville history by helping to found the Matheson History Museum. So the museum was incorporated as an organization in 1987 and opened to the public in March of 1994. So we will be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. There will be quite a few opportunities throughout the year to help us celebrate and get involved. If you text the number up on the screen here and you text join, you can sign up for our email mailing list to keep up with all of the latest programs and events that we have going on. There are also brochures and newsletters and membership cards on your tables. And if I could get my board members, raise your hands one more time. These people would also love to answer any questions that you have about getting involved. And I'd like to finish by inviting you all to join us this weekend for a party. Sarah's birthday is September 9th. This year would have been her 122nd birthday. She was born in 1901. So this Saturday, as Bob mentioned, we will be having live music on the porch of the Matheson house from 2 to 4 p.m. There will be cake, and there will also be a food truck. So we encourage you to come out and join us. And then we also have, as Bob mentioned, on September 20th, we will be having our guest here, Mario, along with David Powell, speaking about their book, Early Cuban Exiles, at 7 p.m. So thank you very much. And do you have any questions?
So I understand the Matheson house and the Hale homestead have similar architecture. Could you speak about that a little bit? And also, could you mention a little bit more about the Matheson Stark Perry? And I noticed there's a marker out on Rochelle Road. If you could mention a little bit more about maybe his past as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so I will start with the question about the architecture. So let me see. We could pull up that last slide again. Here we go. So here is a picture of the front of the house, and it's a little bit difficult to see in the picture, but the columns on the porch, they actually come down to the ground rather than the porch itself, which was a very common architectural feature in Camden, South Carolina. So many of those families who came down from that area continued to use that architectural style. And it's actually interesting, we had earlier this year a termite treatment being done on the house, and one of the people working for the pest control company said that he had been to Camden in, I believe, the Bahamas, and they had, again, this same architectural style, so it must have been more people coming from Camden, South Carolina. So that was an interesting little bit of happenstance. In regard to your question about Governor Matheson Stark Perry, it's an excellent question. I am not off the top of my head able to pull out his major accomplishments or achievements, but he was the, I believe, only Florida governor who was from Alachua County. So certainly a notable person from our area. And
Laura Vidal here. Through the years, there's been talk about how the University of Florida actually came from Lake City, and there was a deal cut by, I think, the city commissioners possibly that involved a lot of water as it's worked out through the years. Can you fill in any of the details on that, on how the University of Florida moved 40 some miles south?
I would love to answer that question because I really know the answer to this one. So in 1905, the state legislature passed what was called the Buckman Act, which was intended to consolidate the number of schools that the state was paying for. So there was going to be one school for men, and they were deciding where to put it. And there was a battle between Lake City and Gainesville. And really, Lake City probably should have got it because the University of Florida was already there. They already had buildings. But Gainesville offered the university to have free water from Bulware Springs. And so that is what tipped the balance in favor of Gainesville. And there was a really wonderful story. I believe it was published in The Sun about, when the decision came in. Everybody was waiting at the train station, waiting for the telegram to come in. It was late at night, and there was parties in the streets for days after the decision came in. The Gainesville residents were very excited. And I gave a presentation to you all last year about kind of a general overview of Gainesville history. And after that presentation, I was approached by somebody from UF who wanted to make sure that I shared, when I tell this story, that UF does pay for its water now. They are no longer getting free water. Off the top of my head, I don't recall the date. So the University of Florida in Gainesville opened in the fall of 1906. So it would have been, I believe, sometime in late 1905 or very early 1906.
Michael Pellet here. Just a quick question. What brought all these people from South Carolina?
Yeah, so that is a good question. What brought people here from South Carolina largely was agriculture. This area is very good for growing Sea Island cotton, which was one of the more profitable varieties of cotton. So that is one of the major pull factors that brought people down here.
Hi. I want to know if the Matheson Museum has the book. Now, what is the book? The book is the baby log from Alachua General Hospital that may have gone all the way back to 1928. I'm not sure, but I know it goes back a ways, and I'm sure many members of this club are logged into that book. And if that book disappeared, it shouldn't have. And if you have it, how did you get it?
So I do know that we have a collection of records from Alachua General Hospital. I'm not sure specifically if that item is in the collection. I know that there are some of the minutes of the board from the hospital, some items from the support club, the auxiliary, but I don't know specifically if the book is part of that collection, but we can certainly look into it.
Kaitlyn. First of all, she is amazing. We're really lucky to have her. Thank you, Kaitlyn. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about how you get your collections and how you prioritize your collections and kind of go through them and actually keep them?
Yeah. So I think this is probably the last question we have time for. But we are largely donation-based. We don't have any sort of acquisition budget. So our collection comes from things that people in our community offer to us. And then we have our collections committee, which is comprised of some board members, some members of the community, and they are the ones who evaluate things that are offered to us to decide whether or not they would be a good fit for our permanent collection. And we do have a collections plan that our collections committee put together a couple of years ago that highlights some of the areas that we would really like to grow our collection in. That includes women's history, African American history, music history, some of those things that are really important here in Gainesville and Alachua County. So when things are offered to the museum, the collections committee will see if they are a fit with our collections plan as well as our mission. And then, some of the other factors that we take into account are, do we already have similar items? Do we have the space for these items? Are they in a good enough condition to be preserved long term? And then once we have decided to take something on, our collections coordinator, as well as various interns and volunteers, will work to catalog it in our database. And we do have on our website is public access to our database. So you are able to go and search through some of the things that we have. That is an ongoing project, so it is not everything in our collection, but we are continually adding new records as they're put into the database or cleaned up to be fit for public viewing.
Thank you so much for that fascinating presentation. It's always great to learn about our community. I do want to thank you again for being here. And just to let you know, in honor of your speaking today, we will be making a donation to the Bread of the Mighty Food Bank in your name. So thank you very much. Okay, well, that was great. I do want to remind everybody, next week we're going to have representatives from Meridian to discuss Suicide Prevention Week, which is next week. So be here for that. I do also want to tell everybody, Greg held up the bottle of Angel's Envy, but take a look at that bottle if you get a chance. It is engraved with Gainesville and Rotary and our logo and stuff. So it's a really cool bottle as well. The quote of the day: if you don't recount your family history, it will be lost. Honor your own stories and tell them too. The tales may not seem very important, but they are what binds families and makes each of us who we are. That's Madeline Langell, an American writer. And then the final thing is today's raffle number is 952. 952. We got a winner over here. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.